Right, so I'll just make a start. We're going to start with the darning stitch today. So that can be used to fill in petals or leaf shapes. So if you want to do a little trial of it on a sampler, you could draw out either a circular shape or a leaf style shape or a petal type shape, because it could fill in any of those things. It's quite a nice filling stitch and doesn't use too much thread. So I've just drawn that out. Thread wise, I'd use 6 ends of embroidery floss, or your pearl cotton, or I've actually got some Sashko thread here, but that's just like 6 ends of embroidery floss, really. You just don't want anything too thin, otherwise it takes a lot to fill in the shape. So I'm going to have a go at doing this circle. I might actually just make it a little bit smaller to make it easier to fill in that area. And what we're going to do first, again with the darning stitch, if it's sorry, not the darning stitch, satin stitch, you can, if you want to, start from the center of the circle. So I'm coming up at the top and I'm going to go down to the bottom, and I'll fill in the left side and then the right side. This will just help me, the same with satin stitch, get what's called the vertical threads, are your warp threads, get those nice and straight. Again, you can always draw on some directional lines. The difference with doing the darning stitch is we don't want the stitches right next to each other like we do with the satin stitch. So we're going to be leaving, you can perhaps see on this one here, about a thread's width between each warp thread that it's called. So what I've done here is I've come up at the top and I've gone down to the bottom. And again, different to satin stitch, I don't then go back up to the top. This is where it saves more thread. I come up at the bottom. So I'll come up and go back up to the top. And again, I'm leaving that thread's width between, a bit of a gap there between them. And then come up there. When you're actually doing the darning for mending, you might want to put them slightly closer together. But for surface darning, this is fine. So I'll do this side, and then I can always tie off my threads and go and do the other side as well. So this might look nice on some of your leaves on your vintage florals, because you could do the warp threads in one green and then the weft, which is the ones that go horizontally, in a slightly different shade of green. Might look nice. Those of you that are doing the fabric scrolls with me as well you'll be familiar with this from the other week as well. So I'll get to the sort of side of the circle there as best I can. So that's probably enough, that short stitch there. And then I'll come round everybody. So I've done this side, and now you can see here on the back, it doesn't use up much thread because it's just a small sort of straight stitch around. So I can tie that off. And then once I've done that, I can start on the other side to get the vertical threads. If you feel okay with it, you could just go from one side to the other. I just find it gets a straight line if you do sort of from the middle out and then the middle out for the other side. So I'm just going top to bottom, bottom to top. And the bottom there. So like I said, if you were using this to fill in one of your leaves, 2 tones of green could look really nice. And then bottom to top. So once you've done all those vertical threads, you can tie off and we'll thread up a contrasting colour. So I'm going to use something really quite contrasting so it shows up in the video. But you could always use the same coloured thread and then you'd have a solid colour, and it's kind of a good filling stitch that on the back doesn't actually use up a lot of thread, so it's quite a good thread saver. So I'll tie that off and get threaded up for my horizontal threads, which are called your weft threads. So I've done those vertical threads or warp threads, and just to say, the circle around it was just I was going to demonstrate on it with that one, but then thought I'll do a smaller circle, so that's why the larger one is going around the outside. So I've done the vertical threads. I've changed now to this green color, but again, if you were doing it to fill in leaves, you might just work between two different tones of greens if you wanted to. It's a good filling stitch. So you can, I've demonstrated it before, the same way that I started in the middle and worked left and then to the right. You can do that with doing the horizontal threads. So you could start in the middle and work out and then do the bottom, or you can work from the top, say, to the bottom, or the bottom to the top. What I find easier is with a shape with a curve compared to these squares. It is probably easier to start in the middle. So with my square here, I've just started at the bottom because the shape's not changing at all. So it's quite easy to, you know, you're going to keep a straight line there. But for a shape that's got a curve on, it might be easier here, where I'm just going to start in the middle. So I've come up from the back, and now with the blunt end of my needle, I'm just going over, under, over, under, over, under, weaving it through, up and down through the threads till I come out at the other side. And if I just pull that, what you're trying to do is you want to get it as straight as possible, as horizontal. So then I'll just take the needle through to the back of the fabric there, and that's our first line. So I'll work the top and then I'll come and pack the bottom part of the circle. As well, you can change your colours as well if you wanted to. So I could do half one colour and half the other to weave it with. So now I'm coming up just above that last thread here. So either side of your surface darning, you are taking the needle up and down. But where you're weaving it, it's not going through any of the fabric. So now I'm just doing the opposite. So I finished going over one of my vertical threads. I'm now starting with an under. So I'll do under, over, over, all that. Now the stitches do sort of start to pack in. You can move it a little bit with your needle to sort of butt them up against each other, but just making sure that when I come to the other side, I take the needle in just above the last line of stitching. Will keep it in line anyway, so don't worry too much. The more thread that we put in for the weave, it will pack it into place anyway. It's the stitches coming up either side that help get it in place anyway. So now I'm coming up just above that. So you can see with this here, this darning, it's not putting any thread behind. So, and I'll carry on here. So this time I'm starting under, over. The thing is with weaving it and using the blunt end of your needle, if you realise you've done one wrong and gone over where you should have gone under, you can just pull it back out again. So I'll carry on doing that all the way to the top of the circle, and then I'll come back and do the bottom part of the circle. So I'll just pause that for a moment. So I'm just going to fill in the bottom of the shape now. So I've done the top there, and now I've come back to the center. So it's just again staggering here the order. So I'll start with an over, under, over, under. What you'll notice, if it seems like it's slightly curving, or your darning's the weft thread is dropping slightly, that'll just get pushed together the more weft threads you get in to pack it in there. So I'll come up here at the side and then carry on and fill in the end of my shape. So, and once it starts to pack full, it all gets itself in line. So I'll finish to the end there. So we've finished the darning there. So you can see when it gets packed full, all the horizontal lines sort of fall into place. So that's what we've looked at first this morning. And now we're going to have a go at, first of all, these whipped flowers, woven flowers, and then we'll try whipping them as well. So the woven is sort of up, down, and the whipped will be wrapping the spokes. So with the woven flower that we're going to start with first, what you need to do is you need to have an uneven number of spokes, as I call them here. So what I've drawn is a circle with a dot in the middle. And what you can do is you can either just, if it helps with your tailor's chalk or pencil, is draw sort of dividing it into 5, your wheel into 5, so they're nice and even. So what you can do is you can either just go into the middle, come to the outside. We're just doing a straight stitch for these, and then into the middle again, out to the next one. So these are going to be covered, they're just to work around. So we're creating just a little star in the middle, and they need to be pretty much the same length as each other. That's why we sort of draw that circle and then draw this star in the middle. The other way to do it, that's in one of the books that I have, is if I just draw another circle here in the center, is you can come up, go into where your next spoke's going to be, into the middle, and loop that under. Then you can go down, up the other side, back under the middle spokes there, and then finish your last one here. That is just another way to get your spokes. That way is probably easiest, just in one of the resources, the handouts I use there, they're done like this. So if you are doing it as a flower, what I would tend to do is do my spokes as the same colour as what I'm going to weave the flower with. I'm going to change the colour so you can see what I'm doing. So if you are just using it and are going to use it on a final piece, I'd create the spokes, and then what you do is actually weave in the same colour that you've done that with. But I'm going to do mine in a red as a different colour. The other thing that you can have a go at doing is if I draw this circle here and I draw a smaller circle in the middle, and then again do these lines of the 5 spokes evenly apart there. In this little cluster in the middle, you could put some French knots, which you could do once you've done the weaving. So instead of doing the spokes here into the center, what I do is just do them, yeah. So it is up, you could always do the French knots in the center beforehand if you wanted to, or afterwards. So I've got my 5 spokes again there to weave, and then what I could do is just come up in the middle and start filling it here with some French knots, which there are some videos for online as well. So if I fill in a cluster of, say, 5 or 6 little French knots, that can look nice in the center of these whipped flowers as well. filled in the center there. So I'll show you whipping this one and then also this one with the French knots in the middle. So I'll start with this one here. So I'll just come up back into sort of the center there. And again, I'm going to use the blunt end of my needle, and doing the odd number of spokes. You could do 5 or 7 or 9 if your circles or florals are larger. We're going over, under, oops, over, under. So having the odd number just offsets it. So, and you just keep going round and round. So this spoke here that on the last row I did over, it's now automatically made it now that I'm going under it. So I'm just spiraling it round. And again, what you can play with is how tight you pull this in. Because on this one here, I kept really sort of pushing them into the middle of my shape. So they're really quite 3D and textured like a rose. Whereas this one, I didn't overly pull it and it's quite a flat design. You just keep doing that until you get back, until you fill in all of the spokes and get to the edge of the spokes. So you can see here fills in really quickly. So I could really push these so that it goes really quite thick, or just let it pack as full as it wants to. There you go. Once it's all full, you can just tie it off at the back. If you found some of your spokes are sort of still sticking out, you can always just do a few little straight stitches to kind of cover it over, cover those few over. Oops. Like that, to just hide those at the end. Finish them off. So on the back, you don't see any of the woven stitch. So again, if you've done one like this with the cluster of French knots in the middle, it's that same again as over and under, but you've just got the French knots in the middle instead. And actually using the blunt end of your needle helps that as well. Got to be careful not to pull them over the French knots to start with. So just to finish those there, you've got your woven flower with just the spokes going right to the centre, and then this one here where I've got the cluster of French knots in the centre. So next we'll have a go at the whipped. So for the whipped flower or wheel, what we're going to try now is doing the spokes again. This time it doesn't have to be an even number of the straight line spokes that we do. So I've got 5 here just to show you how to do the technique, but you can do it with 6 or 7. It's up to you. So I've just set up again this idea of a circle with the spokes. So if you do that now, and then I'll show you how to whip those. What I've just done here, instead of a slightly different shape, is a diamond here that's going down to this point at the bottom here. So I just did some straight stitches, and again I can show you how we can whip those the same as the circular flowers. So I'll demonstrate that in a moment. So I'm going to start now with whipping the circle. So I'm just using these 5 ones here. So I'm just going to come up as close to the center as I can. And I'm going to take it under this first spoke and over, and then come back under it and go on to the next spoke. So what I've done is I've wrapped over that one. And then again, I do the same. I wrap the next one, which will look like this, but in the same motion, I can take it under the next spoke. I'm just showing you there. So I've come up under it, go round over the top of it and under the next one, over this one and under and onto the next one. So again, under and over, onto the next one, and then over and under and onto the next one. Here, under that one, under, over, so come off under it, wrap over the top and under the next one following, wrap it under the next one, wrap it under the next one, under this next one, sorry, wrap it under the next one, wrap it under the next one. You start to see the pattern more the further out you get of the spokes. That's quite a small version of it there. Here, if you've got sort of longer circles to, sorry, bigger circles to have a go with and longer spokes, you get the design more there. You can see here, it's not just the 5 spokes that I did there. This one's got the 9 for in within that one. Okay, so that's whipping it round the circle, and just as an exercise, you could always have a go at doing it like this diamond shape here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap it under the first spoke, wrap it under, and then back over that spoke and under the one next to it. And sort of encourage it down with your nail. Then I'm going to go, so I've gone under that second one. So I'm now taking the thread over the second one and under the third one. And over that third one and under the fourth one.
The base shape of diamond or the triangle?
So now I've got to the other side of this one, and I've taken it down into the fabric and back up next to it now to go back the other way. So now I'm going to go under, working from right to left, under that first spoke, wrap over it, and then under the second one. Then on over and under to the third one. To this side here, take the needle in. And come up just above it. And I can encourage those that have been wrapped further down. So then it's that same again of going under that first one, wrapping it over it and going to the second one. So as you get further up, the gap between them will be longer. So just to finish off here, you can see that I've whipped the circle, but then whipping this sort of diamond type shape also gives a nice effect. So this could be for a petal or a leaf. It looks quite shell-like. So I'm finishing here on just one spoke of the diamond there. So I'm literally at the top point. I'm just taking the needle in from side to side and just whipping that central spoke to finish off the shape. So just taking it under, wrapping it round, and then taking it in at the side till I get to the top there for that one.